Hey, Hare Krishna, dear ladies. Welcome to the April Urban Devi Sangha and Women's Discussion Group. A special welcome to those joining us for the first time. If you are joining us for the first time, please write it in the chat so that we can all say hello. My name is Damodar Priya Devi Dasi, and I co-host this monthly gathering with our dear Rukmini Walker and Surbi Govinda Devi Dasi. So let me introduce our guest speaker for today. So Nancy Rothman received a BS in chemistry from Union College and an MS and Ph.D. in chemistry from Brandeis University. And she has been division director of two National Environmental Laboratories. And she's currently the CEO and principal scientist of New Environmental Horizons, Inc., which is a woman-owned environmental consulting company. Most importantly, she has over 42 years of recovery from alcohol, and she uses her experience, strength, and hope to help others who are struggling in their addictions to change their attitudes and behaviors so they can lead happy and joyous lives. So recently, she led a 12-step workshop for adult children of alcoholics and dysfunctional families, and she developed a series of videos for Karuna Care about the 12 steps of recovery. So over the years, Nancy has counseled many women and men who have faced abusive relationships in their families, work, and communities. And she helps these people bravely find their voice so that they can face the issues square on and help them establish appropriate boundaries to stop the abuse. So a little bit about her topic today. I'm sure you've heard it. It's recovering from resentments and fears. So Nancy will be diving into how resentments and fears can cause us incredible deep pain because of the anger and regret and shame that can arise from them. So she's going to help us unpack those resentments and fears so that we can understand the root cause and how we can surrender to let them go. So thank you so much, Nancy, for being with us today, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I so much appreciate those kind words I wrote. but I have to say that I was really honored to have Rukmini, my dear mentor, uh, guru, teacher, friend, sister, asked me to do this. And when she did, of course, I said I would do this, but I was a little shocked. Me? What do I have to offer this group? And I had to think about it for a while. And I thought, well, I have been sober, clean and sober for over 42 years, and it's really through the 12 steps of recovery that I came to Bhakti, or to Hinduism, as a searching for a spiritual connection. But I'm going to take us through two aspects of what is known as the fourth step of recovery, which is the moral and fearless inventory, looking at resentments and fears, so that we can sort of gather some ideas of how we can view those and sort of recover from them. But first, I'm going to take you back a little bit. I've got to explain it a little bit to you, where I come from, because it's important that you see me for who I am. While I am a spirit soul, I am an alcoholic and a drug addict as well. And I have to say this, my story starts when I was in high school, and just having a lot of fun, a lot of kids messing around, testing the boundaries, in the woods, smoking marijuana, in the late 60s, the 70s, not getting into trouble. But I can tell you, the first time that I really drank, I was with some older kids, and they had gotten alcohol, and we were drinking shots of 151 rum and drinking Boone's Farm apple wine. And when I was walking out in the woods with my friends, I looked up through the trees. My friends were many of them were getting sick by the side of the path in the woods. I looked up through the trees, saw the full moon, and I dropped my shoulders and took what I felt was the first deep breath I had ever had in my life. I felt, oh, this is what I want. This is what I need. it's a story of true alcoholism. Um, and I want to make it very clear that alcohol was not my problem. Alcohol was my solution. Sometimes you'll hear people say, oh, did you hear about Sally's son? He's got a drug problem. And no, he doesn't have a drug problem. He, in fact, has a sobriety problem. And that was my problem. But I didn't realize it. And I think that I was an alcoholic the minute I passed through the birth canal. It had nothing to do with how much I drank. My story might be different from somebody else. But so I didn't, I just went along as a kid does. And then I got into college, and that's when my drinking progressed because I started to use alcohol as a reward. I studied very hard, very nerdy chemist. And I would do well. And at night would go to the Rathskeller and drink beer. And I just started a daily habit of drinking alcohol to sort of as a reward for how hard I worked. And I graduated magna cum laude, so it was no real impact. And I went to graduate school, and that's when my drinking took a different turn. I feel we sometimes talk about our disease from addiction as coming down an elevator. You're going down each floor and you can hit a bottom. Well, mine was more like an escalator. I was sort of sliding down this escalator, and I get into graduate school, and I'm surrounded by people that actually want to be there. They want to study. Some of them had worked for years to try to get to a place where they could afford to go to graduate school. And I'm there wanting the party to continue. And that's really, really the sad part about it is that I didn't know that I could quit graduate school. That's a character defect of mine. I was taught that once you start something, you bullet through. That was one of my mother's lines. And so I just said, oh, I gotta just keep on doing this. But then now my drinking became one of isolation. I was no longer carefree and happy. I started to, I was walk the 1.5 miles up to school, go teach a class in chemistry to the future doctors of America, do research, take some graduate classes, and walk home. And as I'm walking home, I would stop at the package store, put my backpack, empty backpack on the counter, tell the package store guy that this is what I wanted. He'd fill it up, and I'd go home to this room I had in this house and sit there by myself and drinking warm beer and wondering, is this what it's all about? Is this where it's going to go? Things started to change, and not that I was changing things, but things just time went by. I had to move out of this apartment into that one. And one night in New Year's Eve of 1980, I went to a New Year's Eve party, and I met a guy of my dreams. And we were having a great time. So now my escalator, I'm starting to go up a little bit. I'm coming out of that little hole of sadness and desperation, and I'm getting a little bit happier again. And we're dancing, and we're going to bars, and we're having a great time. And it was the late 70s, early 80s, and we went on 3 dates and decided to live together. And that's when my drinking took another turn, because I found out that Mark wasn't an alcoholic. He didn't need to drink all the time. He was just going through the mating ritual of the young Boston 20 somethings. And all of a sudden, when we're settling down, he didn't have to drink, but I did. And now my drinking took another slide of hiding and concealing, because I knew something was wrong. I started to get a sense that I was in trouble. And one day he came home, and he announced that he'd gone to an Al-Anon meeting. Now, Al-Anon is a program for people who have loved ones that are have alcoholic problems or drug addictions. And I was like, oops, here we go. Knew that the jig was up. Something was happening when somebody that I respected, cared about, and loved was starting to point a finger at me, I knew that things were crashing down. So now I went into another even worse phase of my alcoholism. It was the control, the deep control phase. And I can tell you there's a phrase in that's used in Alcoholics Anonymous of, the more I controlled my drinking, the less I enjoyed it. The more I enjoyed my drinking, the less in control I was. And I would look in the mirror if I could look in the mirror, because at this point I had such self-hatred and self-loathing and such shame that oftentimes, I had a mirror that I would turn, like a medicine cabinet, so that I couldn't look straight in the mirror because I hated what I saw in my eyes. But I would say to myself, not today. Today I'm going to do whatever I can not to drink and drug. And come 3 o'clock, the shakes would start to calm down. My stomach would settle in, and I'd say, "Well, no, tomorrow. I'll try tomorrow. Today I need my medicine." So as I said, I really want to get the point across that in fact there's alcohol was my solution, and when I realized that I could not use that anymore, I needed help. And so that's when I went into a detox and a rehab, and I learned that there was a solution for my alcoholism, and that was the 12 steps of recovery. And I want to put up the 12 steps so that I can explain them to you, and make sure that everybody, you can all see those. Yes? Thumbs up? Okay. So this is a generic format for the 12 steps, and I'm just going to read them and then I'll explain them a little bit more. 1, we admitted we were powerless over our addictions, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. And 12, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to others and to practice these principles in all of our affairs. So when I went into the detox and the rehab, I heard, and I didn't know this, that I had a disease of the body, mind, and soul. I thought that I was just a morally bankrupt person, that if I loved Mark enough, I could have actually stopped doing what I was doing if I cared about myself, etc. But I found that they told me that was my body, and I said, okay, I understand that, because I was pretty sick when I went into rehab. You may not have had this experience, but maybe you've seen some people on the side of the in the city street that are laying there. I was black and blue all over. I had lost so much weight. I had lost my sense of taste. I was very, very physically ill. Mentally, I couldn't do anything without a drink at the end. In fact, I sometimes laugh, and it may not be funny for you unless you are also substance abusers, but I couldn't go food shopping without abandoning the cart in the supermarket because I needed a drink. And I think there's still shopping carts in stores up in Boston that I've abandoned there somewhere. Because I couldn't face reality. I couldn't do it without it. So I understood the mental, and then I said, I don't understand the physical, the spiritual part of it. And it was explained to me in the detox. It was a hole that was growing inside of me, that I was in such pain. There was a giant gaping sore that was sort of festering from the inside out of me, feeling that I was less than the lowest of the low, and that I was so in a dark, dark space and had no hope for a solution. And it was explained to me that it was the 12 steps of recovery that was my pathway to a solution for my alcoholism. And that's why I showed it to you. And I did want to explain that this is a format that is used in many different programs. So as I said, there's Alcoholics Anonymous for people who identify as alcoholics. There's Narcotics Anonymous for people who identify as being drug addicts. There's Al-Anon for people who are trying to recover from having to deal with us, with alcoholics. This is my husband, Mark. This is where they learn the 3 C's, that they didn't cause the alcoholism, they can't control it, and they can't cure it, which is very, very important for the non-alcoholic to understand. There's Sex Addicts Anonymous for people who have addictions to sex. There's Overeaters Anonymous and food and people with I'm going to think of the word in a minute, but having issues with how they eat and etc. Overeaters Anonymous is people that program that I am a member of as well, adult children of alcoholics in dysfunctional homes. It doesn't mean that your parents are alcoholics. It's just that there's an incredible dysfunction in a family, and I need help in understanding what's going on. And as well as the Bhakti Recovery Group uses these 12 steps. The wording can be a little bit different, but that is focused on looking at and identifying God or the higher power as Krishna. So there are many different programs, and I might have missed several others. But the point of all that is that the 12 steps have been shown to actually be the pathway to recovery. So the first and most important word in the first step is we, and it means that if indeed I have an issue, I have to get together with other people that have the same issue, because that helps me to understand how I need a community like this one for recovery. And then I had to find a power greater than myself. And I was raised a Methodist, and over time, through my path of seeking a higher power, I came to finding Krishna as that word that I would use for God, or I do use for God, but he's okay with me calling him God too, and higher power, and friend, and father, all sorts of words I can use for Krishna. But then making a decision to turn my will and my life over to Krishna, what does that mean? And what it meant to me was I give myself totally to you, but I also will do the work. And that's where the work comes in with the 4th step, which is the inventory process. When I came in, they said, you've got to change everything. And I'm like, listen, I just drink a little. I'm a great person. And then they took away the alcohol. And 90 days later, I was physically pretty good. And then I started to have all my feelings come back, and the slights and the issues and the self-loathing and the hatred that I had been storing up and numbing with my alcohol use started to emerge, and I didn't know what to do with them unless I actually was able to put them pen to paper. So now I'm going to go into a PowerPoint presentation, and at the end of this, if you want the PowerPoint presentation or want to reach out to me, you can reach me through the Urban Devi if you don't already have my contact information to be able to offer help to you, but you can also get a copy of the slides. So I'm going to now share my presentation, I hope. And does that work? Does everybody see this? Okay. So we're going to go on and look at resentments and fears. So what is a resentment? A resentment is a reliving of a perceived or a real slight. I don't know about you, but I've had many times in my life where all of a sudden at 2 o'clock in the morning, my eyes flash open and I'm in the middle of an argument with somebody that doesn't even know I exist. Just trying to get all the right words together so that they will get to the point where they say, oh, you know, Nancy, you were absolutely right. All along, I've been wrong. That is a real or perceived slight. Resentments will keep us in never-ending confusion, anger, fear, and turmoil. And for an addict, whether you're a food addict, a sex addict, a drug addict, alcoholic in particular, gambling, if I keep on harboring resentments and fears, I could eventually say, oh, I know the solution to this. I'm going to go back and pick up that drink or a drug. And where did they come from? Well, often they come from the roles and expectations we have of other people. So when I say the word friend, certain qualities come to mind. I have a yardstick of what a friend is, and I have a yardstick of what a boss should be. I have a yardstick of, for example, what mother or father. So all these roles, and when these roles are not fulfilled or they're challenged, it's possible that I'll get resentful about this. So I'm going to show you the tools that we use in the Alcoholics Anonymous Fellowship, which is part of the resentment inventory. So talk about columns because that's the way that the AA talks about it, but it's really just line item one or section of the inventory. The first section is we write down the name of the person, institution, or the principle that we resent. And, you know, of course, when I first did my inventories, and we often do these over and over again. I've done them many times because I've gained resentments over the 42 years of being sober. So I needed to look at this many times. But I mean, I've had menopause as a resentment. I've had different schools that I was in was a resentment. So it's not necessarily only people, but people can often be the first thing we look at. Then we look at specifically what they did. That's the second item we think about. What did they do? And then we go into the third column, which is where we look at how I was hurt. How did this person's actions or institution's actions affect me? And I look at my issues of self-esteem, the 7 areas. You know, how I see myself, you know, I am, what kind of pride I'm feeling. No one should do this to me because what I want to have happen, you know, my security, what I need to have happen, person relationships, my belief in this relationship. This comes from the roles I expect for a person to fulfill, the pocketbook and sex relations. And I'm going to give you an example, two specific examples that may make these things a little clearer. And then the next part of this is mine. This is not necessarily something that is in the 12 steps, but I always think it's important for me. Column 3.5 is I paused and I said, did I ever do something similar to someone else? Was I ever the person that actually did this to somebody else? And then there's something called the forgiveness prayer in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, where we ask God to help us show them the same tolerance, pity, and patience that we would cheerfully grant a sick friend. When a person offended us, we say to ourselves, this is a sick man. How can I be helpful to him? God save me from being angry, thy will be done. I try to pause after I have written out all the things, the offenses I feel that this person has presented to me. And then I have to look at myself. That's the hard one. The fourth column is considered to be the hard work. And this is where I am actually looking at how I acted in this process towards this person or thing. I first look at selfishness, how I was trying to keep what I have. You know, I'm better than, I feel less than, or sorry for myself, why I want it to go my way, how I'm trying to run the show. How was I dishonest in this relationship? How I was self-seeking, how I tried to manipulate the situation, and how I'm frightened. Right? So this 4-part inventory helps us sort of dig out what has been happening and keeps this resentment alive for us. Because having a problem with somebody and then within minutes stepping aside and saying, oh, okay, I understand what's going on, does not necessarily warrant all this writing. But this pen to paper is a very good way of reconciling what has been done. It's a journaling, if you will. So here's a couple of examples. The first one I'll use is Susan. I resent Susan. These are fictitious examples, ones I've made up for us. But she borrowed money from me and promised to pay me back. Now, how does this affect me? Well, I'm a trustworthy person and I would never do this to a friend. How could she do this to me? A friend should make promises and not keep them. My pride is hurt by the fact that she did this to me. Now, this is what I want her to recognize that she screwed me. Security. I need her to own up to her own mistake and respect our friendship. Real friends don't screw their friends. In my pocketbook, I was counting on her paying me back to help me pay my rent. When it comes to sex relationship, there's nothing in this resentment in that regard. But you can see, I've got a lot of things here that really bother me about this relationship. Then I go to 3.5. Did I ever do something similar to this? Let me think. Oh yeah, I borrowed money from my parents all the time and I never paid it back. I never even thought of paying it back. Interesting. Yet I'm holding this resentment against Susan for something I did too. Then I say, God, please help me show Susan the same tolerance, pity, and patience that I would cheerfully grant a sick friend. Susan's a sick woman. How can I be helpful to her? God save me from being angry. Thy will be done. And I pause and I think about this, and then I start to look at maybe how I acted in this relationship. So I'm self-righteous. I would never do this to anybody else. I always keep my promises. And as I'm writing this out, I realize, no, that's not true. I intend to always keep my promises, but I don't always, do I? No, not really. Self-pity. I guess I'm not really one of her friends, or she wouldn't have done this to me. So I'm feeling sorry for myself about this. I'm starting to see another side here, right? I never thought about how hard it must have been for her to ask for help. I've only thought about myself this whole time and not about her and her life. Maybe she can't pay me back. Dishonest. I've complained. I've gossiped about her to my friends. And I really don't need the money, but I was so caught up in the principle that I was being so self-righteous about things and self-seeking. I've been sarcastic when Susan says she's going to do something, which I think hurt her feelings, right? I even think she might have forgotten about the money she owes me, and I'm frightened. And this is the core of it. I'm frightened that she really doesn't want to be my friend. So what do I learn about this? I've done this writing, or maybe help from a friend or a sponsor if you're in a program. What I learned from this is I like Susan more than I need or like her money. When I'm done, I don't want to hurt her, and I want to continue our long-term friendship. I will not act abusively towards her anymore. No more gossip and no more sarcasm. This is how I'm going to change. And if I lend money to anyone, I will only do so if I can afford it, and I will never expect repayment. Now, this was a very powerful. I didn't have exactly this resentment, but it was something very powerful for me to learn, that if I give something away, my time, my money, or whatever, I need to expect nothing in return. This is a gift gladly given. And that's what I learned from having resentments and doing this work. Here's another example. My father, this is maybe cuts to the chase to us. He's verbally abusive and I can never do anything right. My self-esteem. I'm a good daughter and I try to do my best. When he yells at me, I feel less than. I want my father to respect me, and if I make a mistake or not do things the way he thinks they should be done, he should not speak abusively to me. I need my father to respect me for who I am. My father should be loving and kind, allowing me to live my life without being criticized. And there's nothing here about pocketbook or sex relations, but you can see I have a lot of anger about my father in this respect. I pause and I think, did I ever do something like this to somebody else? Yeah, I have lost my temper at my friends and family. Yes, I have. So he's done it to me. I resent it, but I've done something similar to others. Forgiveness. God, please help me show my father the same tolerance, pity, and patience that I would cheerfully grant a sick friend. My father's a sick man. How can I be helpful to him? God, save me from being angry. Thy will be done. And then the fourth column, I start to look at my part, right? What have I done? And how I feel. Well, I'm self-righteous. I should be able to live my life without his criticisms, minute criticisms, right? Self-pity. He doesn't trust me. I'm not good enough. I have this fear. Self-centered. I've stopped letting him into my life. I've distanced myself from him, which I know hurts him. Self-reliant. I don't need his approval, but I wish I had it. Dishonest. I lie to him often about what I'm doing, where I'm going, so he doesn't criticize me. Self-seeking. I sometimes yell back at him when I know it's unfair and will escalate the battle. I want him to admit that he's wrong in how he treats me. I'm frightened. I'm afraid he really doesn't love me. This is a very hard pill to swallow. It takes a lot to look at some of this. But what did I learn from this? I haven't treated my father as an adult, which may be why he hasn't treated me as one too. This is difficult because our first vision of a higher power, our first gods, are our parents. May not understand that at first, but when I think of, something that's going to look after me or save me or be there for me, I can be very, very, it can be very confronting when that higher power criticizes me. All of a sudden, God is coming down hard on me. I haven't had a conversation about how his actions have really affected me. When you do this, this is how I feel. That's what an adult says to somebody. If my friend did something, I would say something like that. Or, I know you're trying to be helpful to me, but instead you're making me feel incompetent and unloved. I have to move from treating my father as a higher power to treating him as an equal and have a conversation on an equal footing. I need to learn to set proper boundaries with my father. I've got to stop poking the bear. I don't know why I keep on doing it. I just get into this mood and I keep on stirring it and I just poke. And sometimes I'm causing more harm than good. I have to be able to say, I'm setting loving boundaries so that we have an adult relationship. And then I might have to avoid situations that will cause my father's critical behavior. So, for example, maybe we were planning on going a week-long vacation. Maybe I have to say, I'm just going to come down for 3 days. I have other things I have to do, so that I limit my time until this relationship can heal. So these are very hard things to come to terms with, these resentments, but once we do, when we start to have the lessons learned come to the surface, we really, for myself, I can say that I had quite a great deal of healing in relationships, and also forgiveness for myself and forgiveness of others. So now I'm going to go on to the fear inventory. So what are fears? I'm afraid of losing something I have or of not getting something I want. I have to try to identify the fundamental issues with the fears in order to understand why I have these fears. And then I have to move from fear into faith. I have to trust God. That's basically what the inventory is trying to help us do. So first, it's like the 4 columns, but the 4 columns are a little different. One is to identify the fear and why you think you have it. Then talk about, how do I act? What do I do to avoid that fear? This is a very important column, because this is telling me how I'm trying to not have this fear, but I still have it. 3, the simple truth about facts of my life. And 4 is God's will. How do you think God wants you to show up in all this? So I'm going to give a couple of examples, generic examples. So I have a fear of abandonment. and in this example, why do I have this fear? Well, my family wasn't there for me emotionally. I've been cheated on in unhealthy relationships. I always seem to end up with the wrong person, or I'm single. I keep on having the same relationships over and over again, and I'm always afraid that I'm going to be left alone. And I don't have a lot of friends. I have these fears of being abandoned. So, how do I act? What do I do to prevent this fear? Well, I don't let people know the real me. I never speak about my truth. And then I judge other people harshly. I walk into a room and right away I sum up everybody in the room, who they are, what they are, whether I want to be their friend or not. I accept unacceptable behavior. I know that this person is really bad in my life, but I keep on hoping that I can change them and fix them. And if I love them enough, they're going to start to treat me better. Um, so I pick the wrong people, and I'm codependent. Codependency is I get my sense of self-worth from others. Um, so then I look at the third column, the truth. Despite feeling alone, I've never truly been alone. I've been surrounded by classmates, friends, communities. I know I can join groups, and I can be part of a group of people. Um, I will never truly be alone unless I want to, and especially if indeed I have been working on this spiritual part of my life. I will always have a higher power there for me. I understand that. And I've never been rejected for being myself. Somebody has said, "Oh, now that I know you, I don't want to get to know you any further." I've never had that happen. So God's will for me, how does God want me to show up? Know that you are safe to be yourself. Don't judge others lest you be judged. So try not to pass judgment before you get to know somebody. Experience life and love deeply. Appreciate those around you, but don't be tricked by somebody that you think you can be who you can save. Know that you're worthy of love and respect, and trust in God and open your heart. So you can see how all my fears in this respect can be somewhat unfounded if I look at the reality and what God wants me to do. Here's another example. Fear of not being good enough at work. I sometimes struggle with getting my work done. My coworkers seem to have an easier time of it than I have. I'm uncertain about whether the product I produce meets the company standards, and my friend that started work after me got promoted and I didn't. So I have this fear I'm not good enough. So how do I act to countermand this fear? I don't socialize with my coworkers. I don't want to get to know them. I'm nervous around my bosses. I don't even speak up. I don't share my thoughts. I'm reluctant to share new ideas because I don't want to look stupid. I wait until the last minute to turn in my work because I'm over critical of myself. I'm constantly rereading, trying to refix it. I'm always just right on the deadline. And I judge others' work harshly. I'm trying to make myself look better. So I see what they do and like, well, it could have been better, or I would have done this instead. I'm really a little nasty in that respect. The truth is, I was hired for my experience. I have a happy and healthy family life. I have lots of friends that want me in their lives, that often ask for my help in handling their life's problems. And I have had better than average raises every year. So, what does God want me to do? Do your work thoroughly and completely without fear of the outcome. That's right out of the Bhagavad Gita. Do your duty, but don't worry about the outcome, right? Treat your coworkers with respect. Take a chance, nothing ventured, nothing gained. Hold your head up high, be a person of dignity and grace, and know that you'll be taken care of, and trust in God. So the conclusion on the fear inventory is that generally all those things that I do in column 2 to avoid the fear is actually making the fear even greater. I am creating the fear and making it worse and worse because of my actions. And so I need to do something differently. Like I don't let people in so I can't be abandoned. I don't share new ideas at work so that people don't really know how good I am, right? And fear will only be outgrown with my character building and God reliance align. So if I am actually trying to be more in working in God's will, that in fact my truth and my reality will come together. So be yourself and let others in without fear of the outcome and trust in God. So you can see that these inventories, and I'll put this up, which just shows you the Urban Davy email. And if you can contact me through Urban Davy and we'll, oops, I spelled Urban Davy wrong, DF, that's nice. Like I just changed that just before we got on, so I didn't spell check, which is one of my downfalls. But you can reach me through there if you'd like a copy of the PDF, or if you want to just talk about this in other ways, because this is a lot to chew on. And I say that because there's so many different parts of this that is hard for us to do just by ourselves. And we might need help with this in order to tease these things out. And as a community, it's possible that we will find the right help, and I can help you to do that. But I hope that this has given you some food for thought about how you can look at resentments and fears. And in fact, once we understand that, for myself, I can speak for myself, that once I understood that there was a lot of forgiveness and self-knowledge about what was actually behind all these resentments and fears, that I actually could come to a place where I forgave myself and I forgave others. And therefore, it was no longer me waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning, battling with somebody that really didn't deserve my wrath. And I didn't deserve my wrath either. So I hope that I've given you some food for thought. And I went a little bit quickly because I'm a little bit nervous, but we'll have plenty of times then for the breakout rooms and then for questions and answers. So thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much, Nancy. And amazing that in your generosity, you're also giving extra time for the breakout room. So we appreciate that. So before we go into breakout rooms, we just want to share the reflections questions. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going into small groups and we're going to be talking about these questions. Do you see how expectations can lead to resentments? And what would you do if you weren't afraid? Okay, so let me just go ahead and pause the recording. Go. Okay, so welcome back from breakout rooms. This is our Q&A and reflections time. So we welcome anyone who has a reflection or a question for the speaker to raise their virtual hand. And actually, Nancy, we had a question from someone who couldn't join breakout rooms that I wanted to pose for you to start off, if that's okay. So
Absolutely.
Kelly asked if you could please speak to how applicable this is, so what you shared, if you don't have a substance abuse problem, perhaps talk about emotional sobriety is a term that you use. So if you could speak on that, please.
Yeah, I think that everyone in the world meets the 12 steps. This is not a problem of substance abuse. This is a problem with emotional upheaval, not being able to live life on life's terms. And so when I recognize that maybe there's another way of thinking about things, a different way of proceeding, that I'm not storing up all of these negative emotions and these feelings and fears and I always tell my sponsees that I want them to be women of dignity and grace, and if I'm at that place, regardless of, I'm sure most of you don't have substance abuse, which is why when I'm speaking to you, I'm like a little frightened because I'm so used to being around people who do have substance abuse, and it's like a little bit easier for me because you understand this. Many of you might look at me and say, why did you pick up that drink? I don't understand. You just didn't have to take that drink, but you don't understand. I have a compulsion. When I have a solution and I pick up a drink, my compulsion to take another and another's there, and I'm off and running. And that's why for people who have substance abuse, and it can be for all sorts of things, pornography or total abstinence is important. But if you don't have substance abuse, being able to recognize, I have fears, I have resentments, I have things that I haven't even considered how I should look at this. I think it's very important. So,
Thank you, Nancy. And that term that she used, emotional sobriety, can you unpack that a little bit, please?
yeah, I think that I would say emotional sobriety is having a maturity about our emotions, that we should have a full range of emotions. Just saying I've got to be happy in order to exist in this world is very naive. Um, um, People wouldn't understand that I believe that my alcoholism is God's greatest mercy to me. That was the best thing that ever happened to me because it made me struggle to find a higher power, to find a path that was deeper and more meaningful for me. So emotional sobriety is understanding that the full range of emotions is good and important for us, and it's not just that we're all trying to be happy. If that was the case, I just prescribed to you a whole bunch of antidepressants, and you can all just have a chemical happiness, and we'd be fine, right? But that's not emotional sobriety, and it's being able to live life on life's terms and to be able to feel our emotions, but be able to express them in a kind and gentle way with others if indeed I feel like I'm being trampled in some way. Being able to say, we talked about this in the breakdown or in the slide, when you do this to me, this is how I feel. And when I'm able to talk about my feelings in a way with somebody, when I'm in some sort of a confrontation or conflict with them, then in fact, I really have some emotional sobriety.
Thank you so much, Nancy, for clarifying that for us. And thank you, Kelly, for asking the question. So I see Naveen has her hand up. Naveen, please go ahead.
Thank you, Nancy, for this wonderful class. And I'm not shy to share that I've also, before coming to Krishna consciousness, had substance abuse as a way to escape. And for me, it was marijuana because I felt like I wanted to be in the clouds. I didn't want to be here. I didn't want to think about anything. I felt like I wasn't seen or heard. Um, I was able to dive deep into my own mind and just escape and feel like I'm entertained enough in there. Whatever I'm reading, um, I could self-reflect and just be inwards instead of dealing with what my problems actually are and taking that away. And it wasn't until I started chanting that I felt like it was a huge detox for me. I would chant and cry. Like I'm just, it would just, it was this huge, it was such a long amount of time that when I would chant, and it was like happy tears, it was tears I was just shedding that would just come up, not trying to think, I'm just trying to be. And that escapism, um, it really helped because I found myself, even after I left that, I was escaping in other ways. I was trying to escape in other ways when problems came into my life. But really diving deep into those problems and taking accountability and taking inventory of my feelings and why I'm trying to suppress again, because I've had habits of suppression in my past that led to escaping, trying to escape them. And beginning to address them was like, whoa, like talk about like dark night of the soul type things. And still some of those things come back up, but now it's like, okay, these need to be addressed, or these turn into a big trauma, and then I'm lashing out and I'm angry. And slowly that anger like subsided with working on it. And it's me facing what I'm trying to escape instead of finding things to use to escape it, even activities and other things in that. Like, why stop taking all the other routes except that I had to take the direct route of what I had to do to address these issues I was having as they come up and not suppress them or put them aside because they come up again. So yeah, this was really great talk. I appreciate it. And I'm really glad I was able to come on today and and be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Naveen. Yeah, and there's no small benefit for chanting and going deep there, but I do say that there can be times that that's not sufficient, because I do know that I needed to be in a community of people that have the same addiction I have, who, when they hear me say that there's not a cloud in the sky, my life is going perfectly, but I want to tear it down, they understand it. They understand that exactly, because it's not so much for me that I want to do anything bad, if not bad, but do something that's going to be difficult for me. When the sky is falling, I'm fine. Crisis comes and I'm like, I'm on it. I'm right there, and I'm right there. God's with me. When it's when I am bored, when I am, is this all there is? You know, that I want to stir it up and create trouble. And therefore, I need to also, I found that I have to remain in a 12-step program outside of just a temple or a community in Bhakti. I need both, not one or the other. I need both. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. And we have a question that came in anonymously that I'd like to ask you. So, can you speak about if someone has a sex addiction, and also part of spiritual life? So, if you could speak on that, please.
Yeah, it can be very, very difficult, because sex is taboo. This is a sin, right? And no, it's not. No, it's not. And I think that there are groups. There's Sex Addicts Anonymous. There's also Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous. The people who have addictions to sex because they really want love, and they're looking for love. There is a very big problem, as we probably know, with pornography for men primarily, but women as well. And they need to understand that there is a solution, and the solution is the same 12 steps. Why do I use pornography or sex? Is it because I have fears and resentments? And if so, how can I sort of clean house so that when I get this urge, that I really do something else? I worked with a man who was one of my sponsee. He had 45 years of sobriety, and he had a sex addiction. He found that SA helped him, because he had recovered from alcoholism, but found that sex addiction came in next. And he said, now what do I do? And I said, well, you have to go to the people who know how to help you. I don't have that. I can have empathy for you, and I don't believe what you're doing is sinful unless it's illegal, but I can only help you with the alcoholism, and maybe in the spiritual path, help you find a power greater than yourself that will help you. But you need to find other sex addicts who can say, I did that too. And you say, well, how did you stop that? How did you recover from that? Because you can recover from that as well. And he did. I know he did. And he died sober from alcohol, drugs, and from sex addiction. And it's all the 12 steps.
That's powerful testimony. Thank you so much, Nancy, for sharing that. And thank you also, Naveen, for your vulnerability and sharing that as well. Does anybody else have any questions or reflections? You can raise your virtual hand. Please
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
Thank you so much. Damodar Priya, we had such a rich group, and I'm hoping the anonymous people will also raise their hands to share their wisdom. So I'm begging them for that. I was intrigued with what you just said, Nancy, about the crisis being an impetus to reach out, but that sometimes it's in those in between times when we're just bored, or we reach for that, what do they call it? That southern comfort, right? When we reach for that comfort of something artificial or chemical or not God's. Can you unpack that a little bit? Because that was
Yeah.
really interesting.
Yeah. I think that for me, it's muscle memory, which is what I think that has helped me. And I think that in fact, is where chanting has helped me quite a bit. knowing that that's what I'm going to do, meditate and pray in the morning for an hour and a half, even if I don't want to. I go and I sit there and I find some readings, I do what I can. And because I have that muscle memory, that helps me. Because I go to more meetings a week than I miss. So I go to 4 meetings, AA meetings a week, and at least, and that is a muscle memory. Even when I don't want to, I go, go, and invariably I hear exactly what I need to hear. So at the times when I'm in that place where it's that boredom, I rely upon going to wisdom of the sages. The every morning I go Monday through Friday. Don't go Saturdays and Sundays. It's good flits with my AA meetings, but I go Monday through Friday to go to I go to a sangha. I have a wonderful sangha I go to every week that I'm part of a Princeton Bhakti sangha that I go to once a month. I participate, and somehow I don't have as much time for the boredom to feeling sorry, because the boredom for me is being sorry for myself. Oh, I could have been something else. Why am I this old lady? What's up? And, and in fact, what I do is I keep myself not to distract myself, because I have to feel my feelings and not pretend, but I have to just say, I keep one foot, keep it moving, and I have to keep on having a routine that's a healthy routine. It's like, I don't know about you, but if I eat something that's not really, really healthy, I might enjoy it for the moment, but I know I'm probably going to pay for it, right? At some way. So I generally eat healthily, and that way I don't pay for it. So does that help?
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Muscle memory. So,
Muscle memory.
so many different aspects. I mean, even japa,
Yeah,
chanting japa could be a muscle memory, like having
absolutely.
a practice of sangha and japa and hearing and beautiful. Thank you so much. I see a bunch of hands up.
Yeah, so we have a hand up by Allison. Allison, please go ahead.
Hello. Ooh,
Oh, you
Oh,
muted
you
yourself
unmuted.
again. There.
thank you for that presentation. I was saying in our breakout group that it had helped me so much, not from a substance perspective, but just from an everyday life perspective, because I go through a lot of life, never stopping to think about 3.5 column. Did I do these things to someone? And how did I act in number 4? So I really, really appreciate it. And we had also talked about something I'm trying to work on is how to alter or better communicate my expectations to not have resentment, because I was sharing that I'm finding the word resentment to be such an ugly word. And there's so much beauty in all our studies and all this bhakti that I don't want to harbor that anymore in my life. So how can I change my expectations? How can I look at step 3.5 and 4 to not harbor this anymore? So I'm going to work on that. So thank you for giving me the tools, more tools
Thank you.
in my
I'm always
toolbox.
here.
Thank you so much, Allison. And before we call on Monica, we just had a comment from Josephine that she wanted me to read for her. She says, "My addiction has primarily been workaholism to distract feeling emotions beyond happiness. My daughter, as a young girl, pointed out that there's an insight into the range of emotions that we are gifted, sorry. So I think that really falls also on that question in the beginning that Kelly had. That it doesn't have to be a substance. We could be addicted to work or other means
Oh,
to kind of distract ourselves.
how about being addicted to people, right? Codependency. I am going to be the helicopter parent. It's going to make sure that everything's okay, right? I'm going to make sure that everything's all right. So there's so many different places and that we can have these addictions. I was a workaholic, and it was one of the things that I had to work on quite a bit, because what was I distracting myself from, right? So balance, right?
Thank you, Nancy. And then Monica, you have your hand up. Please go ahead.
Hi. Yes, we were talking about in our breakout group on the heels of, oh no, I forgot her name. The last person who just spoke.
Allison.
Allison.
Yes, Allison, of what she was saying, how to sort of manage sort of resentment and reactivity and this sort of tit for tat mentality. And I was saying that one of the tools I'd found to be very useful is to kind of see the other person as like see their innocence, see them as a child almost. And we're all kind of, when we're in these responsive modes, coming from like this child place. And if you can actually look at the child and the other person, even if it's your parent, um, you see the child in them. And that sort of gives you an ability to have some distance from whatever situation you're in and maybe find some compassion and for them and for yourself in your own reactivity. So it's in a weird way, if you sort of are in a very tight, tense situation, if you kind of just like step back and like think of yourself as a child and think of the other person as a child, everything kind of like gets diffused because you're just coming from these like core emotions that are so primal and basic. And so I feel like that's helped me a lot to like, okay, get angry or respond and feel that, but then just be like, okay, where is he really coming from right here? He needs attention. It's a kid asking for attention. Um, so that's been really helpful. And then also just realizing that whenever you're getting triggered or having these resentments, um, the resentment is coming from a trigger within you. And so that might land differently with another person, but for you, that's been very triggering. And so it's having that compassion really for yourself too, in that situation. So you can feel in your body like the heat and the tenseness that comes from that reactivity. So you get that message right away physiologically that can help you know exactly when you want to respond. That's exactly when to stop yourself and maybe take that pause and sort of, I don't know, just have a different lens. But it's a very challenging thing to do. And if you haven't grounded yourself in meditation, prayer, japa, this kind of thing, that's very hard to do. But when you've grounded yourself spiritually in the morning or first thing at some part in your day, that can help with that reactivity. But I just think that compassion is so necessary, especially because we're basically all traumatized. Like we're all just moving through the world with that's so much trauma and a lot of childhood trauma. And I think sometimes if you just remember that we're just all coming from that place of kind of those traumas, it just helps to be a lot more compassionate. So I hope that made sense.
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Monica. And before we go to Anjana, we did have a question that came up in the chat. So a different Monica had asked, was there a particular event or realization that led you, Nancy, towards recovery from addiction? So if you could briefly speak on that so that we could get to Anjana, please.
Yeah, there was. I was going down that escalator and I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. And there was a brutal bottom that I hit. I can tell you guys because you're my friends, but Mark said that he took all the alcohol out of the house and he never expected me to drink laboratory grade ethanol, which is not good, but I did. And I went on a bender for 3 days on this laboratory grade ethanol. And I could see his face looming over me every once in a while. I just laid in bed in this place of despair, wanting to die, wanting to kill myself. And when I woke up from this, came to after 3 days, I had this Krishna's mercy, God's mercy, that I knew that I was a drunk from my head to my heart. And I knew that while I might be able to fool you to thinking, oh, I can drink again, I could never fool myself ever again. It was so solid that if I if I drank, it was going to be a drunk having a drink. It was not going to be anything else. So it was, bottoms are necessary. It doesn't have to be some, we hear stories and we have things of people who are go to jail, institutions, all sorts of stuff. I didn't have that experience. There could be a person who just looks in the mirror into the eyes of their child who is asking them, please don't take that other glass of wine. That is enough for them. So we can never say when it's enough, it is enough. But that was my bottom. So I hope that helps. Don't do it. Don't recommend you have my bottom. Don't drink absolute ethanol.
Thank you, Nancy, for your vulnerability and sharing that with us. And Anjana, thank you so much for waiting so patiently. Please go ahead.
Oops. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Nancy, for this wonderful sharing. Very wonderful. Thank you, Rukmini and Damodar Priya, for hosting the Urban Day. It's the first time I've been here, but it really is quite revelatory. Yeah, what I realized during the slides of the resentment share was that it's actually, it looked to me as if this is an actual step-by-step template that would lead somebody from the mode of ignorance and passion into the mode of goodness, because fear and resentment are quite negative emotions. And how do we deal with them? Trying to suppress them or whatever doesn't always work. But this is like a step-by-step, how to move yourself out of those modes into the mode of goodness, where you're more able to be, where you're more receptive to, any higher powers message. So yeah, I just wanted to share that. So thank you.
Thank you, Anjana. Thank you.
Thank you, Anjana. And before we go to our dear Rukmini, I just want to remind everyone that as we're nearing the end, please take a time to write your feedback on this talk for Nancy in the chat. I will be sharing these with her later on. And we just want to thank Nancy for her time. And we will go ahead and just remind everyone too that I saw that some people had their hands up and we don't have enough time to get to everyone. So you can ask through the WhatsApp groups, or as we said, if you email urbandevi108@gmail.com, we can pass along your information to Nancy so that she can reach out to you directly. So Rukmini, please go ahead and finish us up.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nancy. Thank you, Damodar Priya, for hosting. And this was so rich. I just feel like I learned so much. I definitely want the PDF. So please send that to me as you send it to everybody else, because I just feel like I could have just gone on listening for another few hours. And, I'd love to hear more about love addiction and so many topics that you shared so authentically. And I'm waiting for your book called Women of Dignity and Grace. Wow. So grateful to you for being here and sharing your wisdom with us so beautifully and vulnerably. I wanted to share when is next month? So we have Urban Davy. Urban Davy changes each month because we have to avoid holidays, of different sorts and different obstacles. Next Urban Davy, if you want to mark your calendars, is May 18th, Sunday, May 18th, and we're going to be hearing from the wise Nanda Nandana, who lives in Gainesville, Florida, at the Krishna House. I don't know if you know her, but she's wonderful. And we touched on some thoughts about japa, and she has an interesting topic. She wants to talk about how to increase your taste for japa. She says most of us are aware of why chanting is important and the benefits it brings, but many may not know how to develop a taste for it. This can make chanting feel tedious at times. Through his poetic prayers in glorification of chanting, called Sikshastakam, Lord Chaitanya offers guidance on how to recognize and address this challenge. The good news is that everyone has the opportunity to deepen their love for chanting through a simple yet effective method. So please join us on May 18th for the next Urban Davy, looking at our personal issues from another perspective. And thank you all so much for being here. I am so grateful to each and every one of you for making this such a pertinent, relevant, and important Sangha. So grateful to you, Nancy. And please join us again. Di Bol, Hare Krishna.